To attach your roof onto your house, you need to make sure, if you're using a house that involves a template, that you choose the appropriate size 2 roof pieces. Okay, so I think I have the smallest template that I built this house from, so I've already have my house assembled, and I have my 2 different roof pieces, okay, so that fit this house size. So there's an A piece and a B piece. You'll notice that they are slightly different sizes. So there is one that's a little bit larger, one that's a little bit narrower. You'll see why in just a moment, okay? Now, if you were doing an irregular regular shape for your house, you're going to have to make sure that you cut your shapes for your roof ahead of time and stiffen them. So hopefully I have some slab that's pre-stiffened for you to use, okay? Now, a couple of things. I want to share with you how this goes on your house prior to us actually attaching it. So what we're going to do is line up these pieces, okay? So if you have a pitched roof and you're using a template, the way that this will line up is like so, all right? So you have the smaller piece, okay? It's going to line up. This is actually, I think this is the B piece. I could be wrong. I'll have to double check, okay? It lines up right with the very tip top of the peak of the roof. Okay, so I'll zoom you all in so you can kind of see this a little bit better. Right? So this is kind of what it looks like so far. Okay, so it's lined up right with the edge of the roof, right with the peak of the roof. The other side, you'll notice, overlaps it ever so slightly. Okay, so they don't meet together on the roof. You have the longer side overlaps the small side of the shorter one. Okay, so I want you to kind of just take a look at that real briefly. So it's going to overlap like this prior to us attaching it on. Okay, so again, the small piece lines up with the peak of the roof, larger piece overlaps it, so that it looks like this. Okay, if you don't do that, what's going to happen is there's just going to be a gap in your roof line if you don't overlap those pieces, okay, and line them up like so. Okay, so it makes that little peak, right? At this point in time, what I'm going to go ahead and do, let me zoom you back out. I'm going to go ahead and score, slip, and smooth these together, okay? Best tools that I have for this are my fork tool, okay? So I'm going to score the edges of where I'm attaching both sets of roofs, okay? I'm also going to score the underside perimeter of both pieces of roof, along with my shorter side, that little side there. Okay, I'm gonna do the same thing I just did to the other side, so all the way around the perimeter. Kind of like so, all right? Clay brushes are in the house today, so please use a little bit of water in your clay brush. Any of the yellow ones will work to add a smidge of moisture to these things. Okay, now just a reminder that your clay roof tiles should be pre-stiffened. Otherwise, your roof might cave in. So I'm adding a smidge of water. And then I'm going to start by adding the small one on first, okay? And I'll tip it to the side again so that you can see it. I'm going to center that on there, but the main thing I'm going to make sure is the edge of this lines up with the peak of the roof, okay? So this is what it looks like here. So the edge goes all the way up to the peak of the roof, right, like so. Because remember, the second one is going to overlap it. kind of like that. Okay. All right. Now, before I do anything else, I'm going to make sure that this is attached on. So I'm going to use my clay tool and pull clay over the seam all the way around. Okay. When you pull clay over the seam, see how there's no longer a line that separates the two. That's very important. Okay. So pretend I did that all the way around. I'm not going to bore you with that. All right. This next piece is going to go right on top like so. It's going to overlap. It's going to overlap this edge right here. In fact, I'm going to change it that way. That side's prettier. There we go. Okay. It's going to overlap it. And I'll share with you what it looks like. So when it overlaps, it's going to look like that. So there's not a gap in the roof line right in the center. Okay. And again, I'm going to score, slip, and smooth it all the way around. Okay. So when you smooth it out, you no longer see that line where one separates. You can also do that right here. Okay, now keep in mind, if you're working with wet slab, you're going to kind of cave your roof in if you put too much pressure on it. Okay, so pretend I did that all the way around. Okay, now at this point in time, what I can go ahead and do, because my roof is attached right to my house, I can work the facade. Okay, so that means the exterior with the building material. Okay, there will need to be one opening that's cut through all the way through the house so that we don't have a giant air bubble that is hanging out in the kiln as it's fired. So we'll talk about that a little bit more later. Okay, but make sure that you have a pre-stiffened slab, and if you're using the templates, make sure you have a small one and a large one, and that they align up like so. Okay, the smaller one lines up with that peak, and then the larger one overlaps it ever so slightly.